Aaliyah Minor and Gus. Uh, Hello.
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry, it's
Oh,
the
okay.
had to hit the
So
record button.
yeah, I wanted to say happy birthday to Aaliyah Minor and Gus Calvert. Both my father and my sister. Their birthdays were a few days ago. My dad's birthday's today, and my sister's birthday was on the 8th. And I just wanted to give them a shout out before we get to going. 'Cause
Yeah,
we have a lot of stuff to talk about.
we do. Happiest of birthdays to them. I think right off the bat, I did want to start with a local story, and it is related to our ongoing coverage of what's been going on with graphic packaging on the north side. And just a quick summation: graphic packaging is a factory in the north side neighborhood of Kalamazoo that has a long history of releasing industrial pollutants into the air. There's been a long ongoing struggle to try to hold that corporation to account for basically turning a big chunk of the north side into a sacrifice zone, which is kind of that is movement speak for when big corporations pollute your backyard and your neighborhoods and stuff. But it's related to that ongoing story because one of the really powerful and just tenacious local organizers behind the struggle recently passed away.
Right.
Talking about Deandre Jones, who died 33. This man was younger than me. Um,
I didn't know DeAndre passed. Jeez.
yeah. But they were chief plaintiffs in the lawsuit against graphic packaging. The suit, which claims the officials are to blame for toxic gas proliferating in Kalamazoo neighborhoods. Uh, Jones suffered from a severe case of asthma and was usually tethered to a machine to help him breathe. The family's home is within sight of the Graphic Packaging International paper mill and near the city wastewater treatment plant. Both facilities are documented sources of hydrogen sulfide gas, which can cause health issues for those with consistent long-term exposure. And I want to put DeAndre's legacy in a little bit of context here, which is to say this is something that's been brought up over and over to like city officials, to people who run graphic packaging, and most of the time those concerns were dismissed or GPI was given a slap on the wrist. By confronting graphic packaging legally, in the legal arena through their suit, DeAndre and their family were able to kind of take on graphic packaging in a way they could not directly ignore. And it really, to the extent that we have had the changes and scrutiny on graphic packaging that we've had, a lot of that we owe directly to DeAndre for forcing this into the public consciousness. And since then we've gotten even like national coverage of it. Jordan Sheraton came through Kalamazoo early last year to talk about what was going on and
Yeah,
investigate.
shout out to Status Quo and everything they got going on. He's done some of the best work when it comes to talking about this story on a national level.
Absolutely. And I don't really have too much beyond that to say. MLive slash the Gazette did a pretty good write up on this. I was reading a little bit from that, but yeah, we all owe DeAndre a lot. It is not easy to take on a multinational corporation, especially when you are, you're a working class family living in a neighborhood that same corporation is deemed acceptable to, essentially poison, as we've talked about on the show many times before. Um, Lawrence, I know, again, you're a local of the North Side. I was wondering maybe you had kind of thoughts and reflections on DeAndre's passing or GPI more broadly.
Man, it's I'm glad I'm saddened that a death of an activist that this activist died and it's tied to the thing that he was protesting, that he was trying to get awareness of. Um, we've known. The graphic packaging has known for years, and the city of Kalamazoo has known for years that the pollutants that that company and some of the other companies, because there's multiple factories on the north side. Graphic packaging is just the biggest factory on the north side, but there's multiple factories that are on the north side that are contributing to the pollution of the air and water. And the fact that the fact that this brother passed away and the residents have been talking about this is a result of your pollutant is the case and point. It is the it's the thing that makes me the most upset is DeAndre had to be an activist, and his story was told because of M Live, and I wish it would get more national news coverage. But how many stories of people dying on the north side has not been told because of the environmental pollution, right? This is the reason why um, getting involved, being an activist, and making sure our stories are being told, and making sure that we are holding corporations and our city officials accountable is necessary. Because the only people who are going to fight for us and try to save us from what's happening is us. And I'm sad that this brother had to pass away for this story to be more impactful for some people. Because that's a father, a brother, that's an uncle. You know what I'm saying? That's no longer can be a positive light in his community. That's been taken away because of that corporation.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think like if there's one thing we should really take away from this, it's we need to continue DeAndre's work. We need to continue putting pressure on this company, this corporation, so that children who are growing up in the North Side right now, they don't have their lives cut down way too soon. They don't have to continue this struggle, which is again just the right to not be poisoned.
Yeah,
Um,
it should also be said that I'm gonna say it every time we talk about graphic packaging, it needs to be said. The study that came out in the 2010s that in Kalamazoo, the people that live on the north side has a 14-year less life expectancy. Has 14 years less life expectancy than everyone else in the county. The
yeah,
people who
it's
live on the
not 14, 14
it's 14.
years.
Now the average person in America will live until their 60s or 70s, right? This brother died at what, 30, 31, 32?
33.
He died at 33. This brother passed away at 33. Like, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. And the other tragedy that the only other thing that I want everybody else to know is that he's not the first, and he's not going to be the last. He's just the most well known and talked about right now. And that's the sad part. This shouldn't be a thing. It shouldn't be a thing that a corporation that this corporation is allowed to poison our city and to poison the residents of the city.
Absolutely. And so I'll just kind of leave that off by saying, rest in power, DeAndre Jones. And in our show notes, I'll link you. MLive did a pretty good write up about it. Headline: Man with asthma who fought for clean air in Kalamazoo dies at 33. And again, we'll link that in our show notes. And again, the struggle continues. There are people who are in the community who are still fighting on this issue right now. And I'll make sure in our show notes too to kind of If you're interested in getting involved with this particular struggle, I'll try to make sure again that's we have a Facebook online. We always leave detailed show notes underneath all of our YouTube and podcast episodes. Make sure it points you in y'all in the right direction if that's something you're interested in getting involved with. All right. So with that, Lawrence, did we want to so there's I guess one of two directions we could go now, which is I know so we're gonna have some Gaza updates later on in the program. There were a couple things I didn't get a chance to talk to with Nora, or we could just dive right into the State of the Union address. Oh, Lawrence, your mic is muted.
There's a few things with Gaza that I was sorry about that. There's a few things from Gaza that I did want to talk about, just for as a hot as some hot takes is that's ridiculous, just absolutely ridiculous, and uh, it hurts my heart talking about it. So there was a story. Let me see if I could pull it up real quick. Um, some of the uh, some UNRWA officials were basically beaten and tortured to give false confessions, to give false confessions that they were a part of Hamas. Like Israel tortured aid workers so that they would confess to being Hamas members. And I'm trying to pull
Well,
up the
so
article right
me
now.
and Nora, we actually did a deep dive into that, and that's going to be in the second hour. But I would be
Yeah.
interested to hear. You'll hear our perspectives on this later. But just what are your what's your initial reaction? Again, to sum it up,
Well,
UNRWA workers, UN relief workers working in Palestine, were literally tortured into giving false confessions about affiliations with Hamas.
so it's that story. It's not just that story that's crazy. The other story that's crazy for me is that I think it was the AP, or it was the Associated Press, or the New York Times, that showed that we have given the America has given over 100 different shipments of weapons to Israel, bypassing Congress and giving them more weapons than before, that was than previously stated. That came out of the AP and the New York Times. The first thing about the UNRWA thing, it is you're on the wrong side of history when you're torturing aid workers. Okay, that's it. That's my basic commentary. You are If you feel like you need to torture aid workers to reach the goal that you think will help your society get peace, you are on the wrong side of history. Torturing people to get peace is like saying, I'm going to be a vegan and all I'm eating is a Philly cheesesteak with bacon on top. Like it makes no sense. You can't get peace by torturing folks, especially workers who are trying to feed starving people. You're the good guy and you're torturing workers trying to feed starving people. I don't understand how you can justify that level of brutality.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Excuse me.
yeah, so that it's that it's that and what is Congress doing? What is like our president? I understand that our president says that he's a Zionist. I get that. I understand that. But why why are we not why isn't the Democrats that represent us, why aren't they making a bigger stink of being like again, shout out to Rashida Tlaib and Corey Bush and Ilhan Omar, because they were holding up signs during the State of the Union about a ceasefire. Shout out to Bernie Sanders for saying we should not give any more money to Bibi Netanyahu. Shout out to those. Shout out to AOC because she's also been decent on this issue. But we're giving more money. We're giving more money, and at the same time, we're walking back our policy because the American policy for Israel Palestine has always been we need a two-state solution. And during the State of the Union, our president said we will need to get to a two-state solution eventually. So now you're saying you're not even sure that that's even possible. We're walking that back now. We're walking back policy that has already been established as the policy that the United States supports. Like it's and at the same time, our president is bleeding popularity from their own base, and they are giving more weapons and money to a to a country that's doing an ethnic cleansing and thinking that we're going to be okay with it. You I don't I don't know if we talked about it during Super Tuesday. I think it was in Nevada or it was in one of the super states that uncommitted got like 30% of the vote. You're
I think the
losing.
highest total was Hawaii, but Minnesota,
No,
which is a swing state, was closer to 20%, I think.
no, but that's my thing.
Right.
Hawaii. Hawaii is deep blue, and 30% of your own base. Like, okay, so there's a misnomer here, and I want everybody to understand. The most uncommitted voters in America are the non-voters, people who cannot vote or who are just not going to show up, or people who, because of Republican trickery, have been kicked off of voting rolls, right? They won't be allowed to vote. But during the primary, you're saying your own base, 20%, 10 to 20 to 30% of primary electorates has said we are uncommitted to vote for you because of your policy that you're doing. And then you send that country more weapons and ammo. I think they're trying to lose.
No, absolutely. And, it's kind of a good segue into not only State of the Union, but reading some of the fine print and kind of what, Biden and their administration's plans are. But,
And
you've
also
noticed,
Harris.
you've noticed like rhetorically, both Biden and Harris have been using the C word more, ceasefire, etc. His plan to build a new a port to deliver aid, which again, let's poke a hole in that. That's going to take weeks, if not months. That is not something that's going to deliver immediate aid to the people of Gaza, and the airdropping that
Can
they've been doing
I
has
can I ask
been,
you a quick question?
yeah.
Let me ask you a question. What kind of ally blocks you from giving aid to people who are starving? What kind of
Yeah,
what is that an ally? Is that a real like you have to go around a friend to get to people who are bleeding and starving? Does that make sense?
yeah, like that's the crazy thing. It's like again, this weird sort of thing where it's like they can't explain even like they certainly can't explain to the press like why do you have to airdrop aid? Is it because the Israeli army and a lot of just like crazy racist settlers are literally blocking the aid trucks from getting in? Is that why? Is that is it's like, oh, we just have to deliver it by air for reasons. You know, and they do leave it
Or
vague
or
like that. And
or
some
or
yeah,
or remember they shot they murdered 100 people the last time they were trying to get aid,
the
and over
flower
1,000
massacre.
of those people got injured. Remember, they knew that that truck was coming. Israel knew that the aid truck was coming. They knew that it was going to a place where people are starving, who are literally eating animal feed, animal animal chunks and nuggets that you would uh feed to rabbits and horses and pigs and cows. They're eating the stuff that you give to animals to survive. and then they shot and killed them.
Yeah,
Like,
and again, think of the context of this where the
but that's our
US is
ally.
saying we're going to airdrop aid because to make sure people are getting it. A lot of the MREs are expired as we've been finding out, and a couple of the airdropped crates have literally landed on people and killed them. We've had some news coming out about that. So I don't know when outright evil meets ineptitude. Um, and I also, before we dive into the State of the Union, there was this article from Truth Out that I think is important because when we're talking about America's plan for rebuilding Gaza, or what the post-genocide landscape is going to look like, the plans aren't good, and it's a lot of that same old. And there's this great article from Truth Out, and I'm just going to pick some bits and pieces from it and summarize, but essentially, some of the worst um, individuals. If we're going to agree that personnel is policy, which is something we talk about on the show a lot, they're literally including a lot of the architects of the Iraq War and some of the most notorious war criminals out there in the plans to reconstruct or rebuild Gaza after at whatever point that the war/genocide ends. Um, so just to summarize real quick, it's a plan that was published as a report last week by the Jewish Institute for National Security Affairs and the Vandenberg Coalition, and it's calling for the creation of a private entity, which is the International Trust for Gaza Relief and Reconstruction. And they want it to be led by a group of Arab countries such as Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the United Arab Emirates, supported by the US and other nations. Quick aside, rhetorically, those last three countries I mentioned do often claim to support the Palestinians and their right to self determination, but a lot of them are more driven by capitalism and money. That's why you don't really see them, lending a more direct hand in what's going on right now. Now, all that being said, so there's some things in there they talk about, including the West Bank and the Palestinian Authority, but they talk about de-radicalizing the population in Gaza, which, if we remember how that went in Iraq, not particularly well. But let's talk a little bit about the rogues gallery who's involved. The chair of this proposal would be Jack Hanna, who served as deputy national security advisor to Dick Cheney from 2001 to 2005. So real expert on regime change there. We've got Eric Edelman, who served as Cheney's principal deputy national security advisor from 2001 to 2003, which is right around the time that we were kicking off the Iraq War. And all their other partners include think tanks like the Hudson Institute and the Foundation for Defensive Democracies, and the Ultra Hawkish Center for Security Policy, which are all these very strongly pro-Israel, neoconservative groups. And to top it all off, I left this one for last. Another prominent member of this task force is going to be none other than Elliot Abrams, which, if you do not recall or remember, not only were they deeply involved in the planning for the Iraq War, but most infamously, they were implicated in funding far right guerrillas in Nicaragua, when it later became known the Iran Contra scandal, literally facilitating the funding and armament of right wing terrorists who would go around murdering innocent people in mass for, again, the kind of financial interests of American corporations. But yeah, if this is
Oh, so you mean Tuesday? That sounds like a
the,
Tuesday for that sounds like Tuesday for what's going on now.
yeah, so
There's literal videos of Israeli soldiers joking about killing unarmed civilians and telling their squad mates about it and them laughing about it. Very similar to when police officers kill unarmed civilians in America and their body cameras are on and they laugh and joke about it. Like it is scary how similar and how parallel they both are. And that rogues gallery is the masters of evil. They are the evil Justice League of human rights of the
Yeah,
for
and
human
again, like
rights.
this is just like when Biden and the administration talks about like rebuilding Gaza after, that's what they have in mind, and those are the people they have in mind for putting in charge of it. So it's again, while I think we should give credit to a lot of activists for really pushing the Biden administration on this, left to their own devices, and if we don't really look at the fine print, they are absolutely going to get some of the worst like Zionist neocons in charge of any efforts to kind of rebuild Gaza after the genocide. So, so Lawrence, with that, I think maybe we can kind of loop that back into a discussion about
Okay.
the
Oh,
State
the
of the
State of the
Union.
Union.
Yeah.
Okay, so Biden had one job at the State of the Union. He had one job. The one job was to give a speech that does not make him look like a senile old man, or that he's an old man, but he's an old man that still got it, and he might be able to run the country. Right? That was his one job. He had one job to do, and because that was it, because the bar was so low, I think that he did a decent job for him. He did a decent job for Biden. You know what I'm saying? It was a C plus B minus speech. There are parts of it that I did like. Obviously, when he talked about the stuff with Palestine, I got sick to my stomach because I knew that the stuff that he was saying was complete garbage. Um, I mean, he started off talking about Ukraine and Russia. Um, he got really snarky and was talking about his predecessor, and he was throwing shade. I like Biden throwing shade, and I thought it was funny that when he got loud and he was being grumpy grandpa, right? That the media looked at it like it was a good thing, but when it was Bernie, they hated on him for it, right?
Yeah,
But
on that note, I do want to kind of hop off that, and I will highlight some of the good because I'm going to be mostly tearing this apart in the next half hour. But
oh no, it was
uh,
it was it was good for him, but it was still there are some horrible things that was in there, absolutely horrendous.
well, I did want to point to he did highlight some accomplishments of his administration, like the child tax credit, a few other
Hmm.
things, and I do want to say, um, uh, within that, and plus him using a lot of this more progressive rhetoric, talking about rich people paying their fair share of taxes, etc. I think,
Sounding like Bernie.
Yeah, well, exactly. And what we need to looking at that from a movement perspective, I think what we need to understand is we forced, and that we as in progressive organizers, leftist organizers across the country, in one way or another, forced one of the architects of neoliberalism. Again, he wasn't one of the big creators of it. We go back to Chicago School and all that, but he definitely was neoliberalism's little helper in Congress through the 70s and 80s. And to force a politician like that to rhetorically disavow neoliberalism and at least kind of be forced to pursue some of these more uh, you know important progressive policies, and also kind of talking about a lot of these I know he spent a lot of time talking about kitchen sink issues, credit card fees, shrinkflation, Ticketmaster, etc. That is, I think, a barometer of the strength of progressive social movements. You go back 10, 20 years ago, Democratic politicians weren't talking like that. They were talking about how, like, the free market's going to fix everything, and we just need to train everybody in tech jobs. What we got from Biden is somebody who at least realized that rhetorically, and at least through throwing some crumbs of policy out, you have to kind of turn your back on the Reaganomics that have been the status quo for the last 40 years, because that just is not going to fly anymore. Even with a lot of Republicans, it doesn't fly. Of course, their solution is more free market capitalism, which is silly, but we're not going to get all into that. Um,
Oh no, we have to get into that because that was the Republican response. That that
yeah, that's true.
dumpster fire of a speech. Okay, but what was some of the things that was absolutely bad? Biden talking about uh urging Congress to pass the Joe Lewis bill, right? This is a
Mm-hmm.
bill that I care about. I wanted them to pass. One of the reasons why watching that made me angry is because I remember when they put HR 1 out there, right? The George Floyd Policing Accountability Act, restoring the Voting Rights Act, uh, enforcing it with the John Lewis Act, right? All these things that Black voters cared about, passing the $15 minimum wage, right? All of
Mm-hmm.
these bills that we were told were layups that Biden they were going to do, and they threw it under the bus. They completely threw it under the bus. And watching that speech, listening to him talk about some of the more economic populism stuff about, yes, um, this is the lowest unemployment in some years, right? The job market, we are net positive when it comes to to uh to having jobs in this country. All those things are true, but all the other policies that would help your base, the things that your base wants, especially the Black voters that got you Georgia, that got you Michigan, that got you these swing states, you did not pass, nor did you even attempt to pass any of the legislation that they cared about. As a matter of fact, you threw all that stuff under the bus. So it was disheartening to listen to that speech, and many times saying, Congress, we need to do something. Congress, we need to when it comes to gun reform, right? I want assault weapons ban, but I passed the most consequential, the most comprehensive gun reform during my administration. If you passed the biggest gun legislation in your administration, why wasn't there a ban on assault weapons in it? Why wasn't there red flag laws in it? Like this there's things that you're saying, yes, a small portion of it is true without context. A small portion of it is true.
Well, I think
Then
it boils down, kind of piggybacking off what you're saying is, voters aren't stupid. And what they'll remember on
they're not.
election day are not these attempts or even the child tax credit, which I think is no longer in effect. They'll
It's
remember
no longer in effect anymore.
the
It's,
litany of
it's no
broken promises, the litany of broken promises, and they remember too that, like, again, maybe if you're not into the weeds of the politics, you may not know about like the stories about the parliamentarian and all that, or Kristen Simmons stuff, but you will remember that he promised this stuff and he couldn't get it done. And when Republicans on the far right try to get stuff done in Congress, they get it done. They cheat and throw the parliamentarian out. They do like tooth and nail to get policies passed that either make the rich richer or make fascism more fascist.
I
Whereas
want to remind I would like to
Joe,
remind
yeah,
everybody I would
mm-hmm,
like to remind everybody that during when Paul Ryan was the head of the House, right?
mm-hmm,
The tax cut bill that they passed only had 21% approval rating in the country.
mm-hmm.
21% of the country actually wanted that bill passed. And what did they do? They shoved it through.
Yeah, we
They
were
shoved it
remarkably
through.
close. We were remarkably close to getting a $15 federal minimum wage, And what happens? Joe's, oh, the parliamentarian says we can't do it, Jack. What can I do? Oh, yeah. And by the way, it
Christian
is within the
cinema,
president's
Christian.
power to ignore the parliamentarian. He literally made that up. It's like, it's
No. What people will remember is, during the debt ceiling in 2000 was it 22, when it came to the filibuster and the parliamentarian, they ignored it. When it came to the economy about to crash, they didn't have the parliamentarian as an excuse. They just passed the bill so that the stock market wouldn't crash.
Mhm.
It just so happened that it also affected their bank accounts as well. But when it came to their pocketbooks being affected, they didn't use the excuse of the parliamentarian or Christian Cinema or Joe Manchin. But they did use those excuses when it came to the policies that they said they were going to pass, that they promised their base that they were going to do. And I still need my $600, Joe Biden. You get you and
Yeah,
that's
I
another thing.
remember that. Oh my
During
God, yeah, the government
during
pay still owes me
but that's
600.
but
Uh,
dog, the COVID relief, the things that was given during the COVID relief um portion of the Biden administration that helped poor people and disenfranchised people make it through the pandemic, they have taken those things away. They've taken a lot of those things away. So people are now like, why am I going to vote for someone who helped me out and then took who gave me a carrot, but now all I'm getting is the stick. It's the same thing like asking my Palestinian brothers and sisters or Muslim brothers and sisters in Michigan to vote for Biden when Biden has sent more weapons and money to Israel, who's killing their family members.
yeah, absolutely. And of course, we didn't really talk about it, but like a lot of the response was from like white liberals were very ghoulish. Like, oh, I hope Trump wins and you get deported, kind of thing.
Other
Um, Speaking of deportations, I actually did. So one thing we haven't touched on yet, and I think this is probably uh, the worst thing from that speech. And if you're watching the video of this, you see I'm wearing my shirt "End all detention and deportation on day one." And this is actually I usually don't give backstory on my fashion choices, but this was from I participated in some civil disobedience with Movimiento Cosecha during the 2020 primary. And I wanted to wear this today just to kind of remind myself of how far the Biden administration has just absolutely whatever values they were pretending to have in 2020, just how much it is just completely they've just completely dropped off.
It's gone. And
Yeah,
it's gone.
yeah, it is absolutely gone. We had you running in 2020, campaigning on keeping families together, and in that State of the Union, we had nothing but scaremongering about immigrants. We had him referring to immigrants as illegals. We had him parroting false talking points from the far right about immigration, and I'm going to get down into some details in a second. But and talking about, hey, Jack, let's me and the Republicans get together so we can all be fascist toward immigrants together. It'll be great.
Okay, okay, so there's two parts to that. Yes, he used some language that is not okay, but when you listen to the entire statement, he was defending immigrants when you listen to the entire statement of what he said. But at the same time, when you're trying to do the Obamacare version of immigration and you're basically doing the right wing policy on immigration and asking your predecessor who told his flunkies to not vote for the bill because he wants a political win, you're on the wrong side of history. He even said during his State of the Union that we need uh more judges to get down to the border so that they can so that we can speed up asylum claims and things of that nature. And that's actually the right policy. That's the right thing you should be doing. We should be having more judges, more translators. We should be having more humanitarian aid, not just going to the border, but also going to the blue states who are getting an influx of immigrants to New York and Chicago and other places, so that they can house these people. And we should have a better pathway to citizenship so that these people can actually be recognized as Americans.
I
That
think
the
here's
stuff
what
that I'm
really
saying was not being said during was not effectively said during that speech.
well, a lot of it is what wasn't said, and the way
Yeah,
that he gestured towards these right wing conspiracy theories and essentially validated them by omission. So at one
yeah,
point, Joe Biden references the rate at which fentanyl is being smuggled in from Mexico. Now,
yeah.
context is key here because let me explain something. That is
Context
actually,
matters.
yeah, that is true. A lot of it comes from various cartels in Mexico, the Sinaloa cartel in particular. But here's a number that you would not hear from Fox News and you did not hear from Joe Biden during the State of the Union address. 86% of fentanyl trafficking offenders are American citizens.
Mm,
86%. So
uh,
let me explain just the logic of this real quick. So again,
okay. People are gonna ask you to cite your sources. So where did you get that from?
that is data from the U.S. Sentencing Commission. So that is literally just raw data from court cases. This isn't. There's very little room for spin here. That is where it is. Yeah, again, and the reason for that, if okay, like imagine you're a criminal organization, you're the Sinaloa cartel. Do you want your drugs smuggled by somebody who fits the profile of like an MS-13er or somebody that like all these racists, running the border patrol are going to look out for, or are you going to hire an American criminal who knows what they're doing? Yeah, it's just there's that. So again, that is a fact that exists by not saying actually most of the fentanyl is being smuggled by American citizens. By omission, you're saying, "Oh yes, Republicans, you're absolutely right. These migrants are smuggling uh, fentanyl through the border. It is not the migrants smuggling fentanyl through the border whatsoever." And I also wanted to point to another little factoid um, by talking about security at the border, it ignores the fact that again, a lot of the scaremongering is about migrants committing crimes once they cross the border. And I wanted to point out American citizens commit more crimes proportionally than immigrants do. And I wanted to point out there's several different places I can get this data from, but one of the most eye-opening for me was uh, it was a study done by the Cato Institute. Now, if you're not familiar with the Cato Institute, they are a far-right libertarian think tank. And they did a study in Texas in 2019, and they found they the people who are literally have it is their political project to try to demonize immigrants. They found that undocumented immigrants were 37.1% less likely to be convicted of a crime. Now, there's a lot of explanations for this. I think the simplest one is if you're in danger of being deported, you're probably going to be more careful and you're not going to go out and engage in criminal activity.
Oh,
Both of these things were completely
absolutely.
missing from the State of the Union address.
Oh, no, no. It that part right there when he said, okay, it wasn't missing. I in It wasn't missing. He said it poorly. It was missing, yes, but he also said it poorly when he was arguing with Marjorie Taylor Greene. That interaction in particular. So there's a segment for those who haven't seen it where Marjorie's wearing the "Make America Great Again" and she's holding up a pen of a an undocumented person committing a crime, committing a murder, right? And Biden stumbles. This is actually one of the worst gaffes that he has of the night. It's one of the worst. But he says, yeah, this girl was killed by an illegal. But then he also says, but how many Americans are killed by illegals? And it's like, brother, okay, I'm am I upset at the language that you're using? Yeah, it's not good. It's not a good thing to say. I understand that he's an old school politician, so a lot of their language is still hasn't caught up to modern vernacular. I'm more upset at the policy that you're doing or proposing. I
Mhm.
care more about how that policy of you just shutting down the border, you're just gonna shut down. We're proposing that the president has the power to just be like, "Hey yo, no more people's coming through, bruh. It's over. Shut it down." Like that. We're proposing that the president has that power, and you're losing to Trump in battleground states. So hypothetically, if that bill was to pass, Trump would have that power on day one.
Yeah, again, it kind of reminds me of, like, we were having discussions. Our show's been on for a long time, and back in like 2016, we were talking about how like the Obama administration was kind of leaving Trump with a dictator's toolkit. And between this and like a story we're going to talk about later, the National Guard being deployed to the New York subway system, it's like it's
Yeah,
happening
I
again.
I
They're doing that
also
again.
I also want to talk about that story as well. That story is a banger. I might have to stick around just for that story because
Um,
that is insane.
yeah,
That's absolutely insane.
I did want
But anyway,
to
no,
just
no.
put
Can
throw
we
out.
talk about the Republican response real quick?
All right,
Because
let me just I want to finish out a couple more bits of context here. So, I did want to mention too, and we brought this up on the show. This is something nobody brought up the State of the Union or the response. Migration to the United States is a direct result of neo-colonial policy that the United States government has engaged in over the last several decades. More recent examples, we can think about what was going on in Honduras, where we replaced a democratically elected leader, supported a coup across both Democratic and Republican administrations. It turns out the dude that we propped up ended up being a drug trafficker, and the authoritarian conditions that he established in Honduras forced a lot of Hondurans to try to migrate to the United States. We also see this with economic policies like NAFTA and the more recent trade agreement, which in one way or another have impoverished either people in Mexico or people in Latin America. So they have to
I'm
necessarily go northward to seek opportunities. So
or
please don't
or
forget that
or mm,
in these
sorry.
these discussions, like the migrant crisis, whatever you want to call it, it is the fault of neoliberal policies, neocolonial policies across both Democratic and Republican administrations. And don't ever, in all the rhetoric, whether you hear it from Democrats or Republicans, do not forget that.
Just to add to that, just to add to that, look at the situation that's going on in Haiti, in Haiti right now. We we have basically the candidate that's president right now is having a crisis in that country where there are gangs wanting to overthrow him because of the policies that we helped back the president doing, their president doing. It is um it is our our input in that country to back the president that's in power now, and the destabilization that we have done to that country. It has led to migrants fleeing from that country because of the violence that's happening. Like the what and also, if you think the migrant crisis is bad now, think about what's going to happen if we continue to uh if we continue to let Israel, if we can continue to let the things that's going on in Yemen that we are a part of by funding Saudi Arabia to do a genocide in Yemen, what's going on in the Congo, what's going on in Darfur, what's going on in Haiti. All those immigrants are going to, or all of those people who are displaced are going to want to go somewhere. They're going to want to go somewhere, and if they can, they're going to try to come here.
Oh, absolutely. And so, Lawrence, what you so you're bringing up another point before I talked about the whole like neocolonialism context. What were you about to say?
Okay, so we have to, okay. I gave even though I have my gripes about the speech, I have a lot of gripes about the speech when it comes to actual policy, right? Um, on some of the issues, I thought that Biden had to do his one job was to get through a speech without having any major stutters or blunders and look like he can actually make it to November and to make it to the convention, right? He needed to look like he could make it. And on that, because the bar is so low and we grade this president on a curve, I feel like he did a decent job. I gave it a C. I gave it a C plus, you know, overall. But that Republican response, bro.
Oh yeah, I didn't
that,
even watch it, but
that,
I've just been hearing about it
oh
all week.
my God. Hold on. Let me give you some highlights. Hold on. Oh my God. Okay. Okay. So let me pull it up because I took notes. So this Republican response, I forget the lady's name. Uh
Katie something from I didn't even know who
yeah.
that person was either. Like I had to.
No, she's an Alabama representative. Um uh hold on, because I actually I because I wanted to make some notes. Uh so so the response from Katie Britt, right, the Republican response to the State of the Union, it's so bad that Fox News had to call her out. Fox News called her out on some of the flim flam and hornswoggle she was spitting. It was so bad. Um, her talking about the thing in particular, the worst thing in the spot. It's garbage. It's bad. It's worse than Marco Rubio response when he had to stop and try to get a drink of water in the middle of his speech and act like the camera still wasn't on him when he went to do it. It's so bad. But the worst thing that was in that speech was she told an antidote story about a young woman being sex trafficked, and she was uh tying it to the immigration and immigration policies of the president. It is and she's gotten so much backlash because a the woman in particular had to respond. One, the this woman wasn't trafficked in America. She was trafficked in Mexico. Two, when it happened, she was 12 years old, and that was during the Bush administration. It wasn't during the Biden administration. Three, the policies that Biden talks about wouldn't have helped her. But she said this anecdotal story and tried to tie it to Biden as a way of saying his policy failed this woman. I want to remind everybody, she's an Alabama representative. So, in Alabama's policies, when it comes to the border and immigration, are worse than the draconian bill that Biden wants to pass, right? So, even by her logic, If that woman wanted to come to America to escape the brutality that she was facing in Mexico, she wouldn't let her. And on top of that, remember, Alabama is against not just in vitro fertilization. Alabama is also will force a woman to carry their rapist uh their baby that's a product of rape to term. So even by her own Republican standards, if that was to happen to her, she would tell that woman to stay where she is, and if you do come here, we're gonna force you to keep the baby. It was so disgusting that even Fox News called her out. You know how bad your speech has to be if Fox News, who's the defensive linebackers of the Republican Party, is like, bruh, I can't block that for you.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty bad. I think I also caught there's a lot of kind of pushback on just trying to do this whole trad wife thing, which even some right wingers who are all like that's their whole like thing is they do like this whole like conservative trad wife thing on YouTube. We're like, no, honey, you're not it's doing it
Dog,
correctly.
they did. They took a picture. Like I think they took a picture of her and her family in the kitchen, and there were no pots or pans. There was no pots and pans. There was no salt. There was nothing in the picture
Well,
that
you see,
makes
the lack of seasoning might make sense, but you do need pots
like
and
dog.
pans.
There was nothing in the picture that's like, yo, do y'all live here? Like, like what is going on? it was it was so bad. Like, if I want y'all to go and watch the Republican response while you work out at the gym so you can laugh and be motivated to get in shape because they're lying to your face. I know when someone's lying to my face, it makes me angry. So being angry and working out, works out. But it was so funny. Oh
Yeah,
my God. Like, and
I hear that though.
oh man.
All
There's
right,
there's a
well,
couple other stories that I want to talk about, but we can move on.
all right. Well, Lawrence, I was gonna say we're at about the halfway point of the show, and I know we've got about an hour with Nora.
All right.
So um anything else you want to say real quick before we go to break? I know there's a lot to talk about, but I know we've got other stories to hit
I
on while we still have time on the show.
I do want to stay on for the New York story. I have like 15, 20 minutes that I can play around with before I have to get off. So, you know.
Okay, you know what? I think so let let me just I'll tell you what. Why don't you go ahead and I know that's kind of towards the end of me and Nora's discussion
I got you. Uh,
what will why don't you go ahead give us your thoughts on it
all
and
right, my quick hit of New York pulling a Rudy Giuliani and going back to stop and frisk. It's it's draconian, it's authoritarian, it is fascist by design. It uh it has slowed down the traffic of people needing to actually get back and forth to work. It is taking away resources from instead of actually getting better security for the transit system, or it is actually making things a lot less safe in the face of what's going on. And instead of having the National Guard there, they could put more money into protecting the transit system or upgrading the transit system so it's much more efficient. Uh, uh, they could put if they need to put money into security, maybe hiring more security for in the transit area or things of that nature. There's a number of things that you can do instead of unleashing the National Guard, because you're not uh affecting the actual core problem. If we're talking about homelessness or other issues, or that's some of the issues down there that's leading to violence, then maybe we should be putting more money into mental care and housing and affordable housing for people. Just, just there's a myriad of solutions that does not. that does not include the National Guard being brought to the city.
I think that's a good point, and I think that's something me and Nora didn't really touch on, which is like you can't enforce your way out of problems related to houselessness.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about later, like crime in the subway system in New York is actually down, but um, kind of like again, we're thinking of stories about people having mental health episodes in the subway system. You need a counselor, not a National Guardsman. Like that's
Yeah.
it is ridiculous and thoroughly American at its core. But yeah,
Yeah. It's a how do we solve rampant inequality, mental health and joblessness? We throw security and the police state at it. That's what we do. We throw
I'm
the
sure that'll
military and
fix it.
police state at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we
um,
do. Um, there was a couple other things, but that I also want to talk about, but I'll give you that some quick hits later. I'll let y'all another time.
all right. Okay, Lawrence, once again, thank you for joining us. Lawrence is one of my co-hosts. We're going to be joined with Nora for the second part of the show in just a minute. Thanks again, Lawrence. You have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll come back. Me and Nora are gonna hit on Super Tuesday, a couple other really critical issues. We're gonna Media Cypher is gonna go to the movies. We're gonna talk a little bit about Dune. So stay tuned for that. And we're also gonna have some more updates about Gaza and the genocide going on over there. Keep your dial locked. This is Media Cyphers, your only source for political revolution.